Good morning. Good morning, everybody. We all know Lowell, and a lot of us have very much enjoyed some of his programs in the past, and he was talking about art last time he was here too. But this one is, I guess you could say, truth is more dramatic than fiction. One of the world's greatest art heists, as it says up there. It's quite a story. So go ahead, Lowell, tell us.
How many of you have been to the Gardner Museum? I assume that would be the case. Okay. What I wanted to do today was to talk a little bit about the background to the museum itself, and then what's considered to be the world's greatest art heist. The Gardner Museum is located in Boston. It was established and developed by a woman named Isabella Stewart Gardner. She lived from 1840 to 1924. She was an American art collector, philanthropist, and put in capital letters, perhaps, a patron of the arts. She had a reputation for stylish tastes and unconventional behavior. She might have fit in quite well here. She was often referred to as quirky, which reminds me of some of the people who live here. She married Jack Gardner, who was quite wealthy in 1860, and this then initiated a lifetime of collecting art. This is her. The picture on the left is a portrait by the Boston artist John Singer Sargent, and then a photograph on the right. I think you could say she was quite a formidable lady. First, I want to talk a little bit about the collection, then I'll talk about the museum, and then I'll talk about the heist. In 1874, Isabel and Jack Gardner visited the Middle East and Central Europe. This was followed by a number of trips to Europe when they began to accumulate art. And in 1891, she began to focus on European fine art after she inherited $1.75 million from her father, which is a good start, if you will, in the 1800s. One of her first acquisitions was a painting by Vermeer called The Concert. We'll come back to that because that's one of the key points in the heist. But there are a total of somewhere around either 34 or 35 Vermeers in the world. So if this was her first purchase, it was a very astute purchase because Vermeer is widely appreciated, widely known, and yet there are very few works of art by Vermeer in existence. So with a little bit of money and time, the Gardners built very rapidly a world-class collection, primarily of paintings and sculptures, but also of tapestries, photographs, silver, ceramics, manuscripts, along with a wide variety of architectural elements, things like balustrades and so on. So a wide variety of the things, both in the fine arts and the decorative arts. Nearly 70 of her works of art were purchased with the help of a very well-known art connoisseur, Bernard Berenson, who was living in Italy at the time. He's written a history of art, but he was a very helpful guide to her, if you will, in terms of pointing out what kinds of pieces she might add to her collection. The Gardner collection includes works by some of Europe's most important artists, such as Botticelli's Madonna and Child with an Angel, Titian's Rape of Europa, Fra Angelico's Dormition, and Assumption of the Virgin, and Velasquez, King Philip V, IV of Spain. So she's developing this incredible collection of fine art, European fine art, along with all this other stuff. So it's very eclectic. So she decides that perhaps what she should do is establish a museum. And in 1898, she purchased land for a museum in the Fenway area of Boston. This is near, you might imagine, Fenway Park, where the Red Sox play. Some of you may be Red Sox fans. Some of you may be Red Sox anti-fans. It's also a very short distance from the Boston Museum of Fine Art, the MFA. So it's an interesting location in what was, at one point, swampland. She hired an architect, W.T. Sears, to build a museum, and she modeled the museum on the Renaissance palaces of Venice. And she was deeply involved. It wasn't based, some people say it was based on one particular palazzo, but it was more eclectic than that because it drew from, I think, a number of different palaces. And she was involved in every step of the design. She was a very hands-on lady. The design of the museum is with 3 floors, 3 gallery floors, around a glass-covered garden courtyard, and this was the first courtyard of this type in the United States. She spent nearly a year installing the collection, and she installed it according to her own personal aesthetic. That is, it didn't need to make sense to anybody else, and it probably doesn't make sense to anybody else. If you've ever been there, you realize how eclectic it is. But she designed it according to her taste, and in the gallery installations, there are paintings, there are sculptures, textiles, furniture from different periods and cultures, basically combined to create what could be called a very rich and complex and unique narrative, reflecting her interests. The museum opened privately on January 1st, 1903, and subsequently it opened to the public. In her will, she made a large endowment to the museum, $3.6 million, this was in the early 20s, and stipulated that the permanent collection and its arrangement not be significantly altered. The museum is still arranged with a variety of textiles, furnitures, and paintings, floor to ceiling. The idea of installing the art and then stipulating that it not be moved or changed in any way is similar to what was done in Philadelphia with, and I'm blocking on the name. Who did the Philadelphia? Barnes. Sorry, brain freeze. The Barnes collection in Philadelphia. Barnes established a collection, probably one of the world's greatest collections of Impressionist art, and stipulated in his will that nothing be changed. And that resulted in a number of lawsuits, and the Barnes collection is now in Philadelphia. But Isabella Gardner did the similar thing to Barnes, and basically said, this is the way it's supposed to be. And if that was violated, everything would go to Harvard. And some people liked that idea, and others did not. So here's the sign, welcome to the museum, Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum. Here's the original building that's subsequently been modified. Not too impressive from the outside, but here's the courtyard. And there are concerts that are held there in the summer and things like that. So it's glass roofed. It's an atrium basically with a roof, and this just gives you an idea. You can see the 3 levels of galleries on the 3 sides, and so it's quite an interesting and imposing structure. It's a small museum. It's I think probably one of the greatest small museums in this country. in terms of the quality of the collection, and it's encyclopedic. Unlike some of the other smaller museums, which are more targeted, this is really has an incredible variety, as you can tell from her collecting interest, of items on display. So that's the museum. The heist. Everybody refers to this as a heist, and I'm not sure why a heist as opposed to a theft. But I think it has a little more romantic appeal to say this was a heist than a robbery. This occurred on March the 18th, 1990. This is the headline in the Boston Globe the next day. $200 million Gardner Museum art theft. 2 men posing as police tie up the night guards. And this shows you two of the major paintings that we'll talk about in a minute. But the question is, and continues to be, who did it, why did they do it, and what happened to the art? None of the art has been retrieved. None of it has been found after 34 years. So it's an intriguing story. It's an unsolved mystery. There are probably at least a half dozen, if not more, books written about the heist and discussions of who did it, why they did it, and so on. So I'm going to try to give you an overview of what some of those thoughts are. The heist was carried out over a period of 81 minutes. It began in the early morning hours of March 18th. This is the day after St. Patrick's Day, by the way. St. Patrick's Day has some great significance in Boston, as probably you are aware. There are a lot of revelers that are still out in the early mornings of the 18th, left over from the St. Patrick's Day celebrations. And in fact, a couple of those people enter into the discussion of what happened here, but I'm not going there. But basically what happened was that about early in the morning of the 18th, the vehicle pulled up near the side entrance of the museum, not the front entrance, the side entrance. Two men in police uniforms pushed the museum buzzer, stated that they were responding to a disturbance, and requested to be let in. Guard on duty broke protocol, allowed them in, and then the officers asked him to step out from behind his desk and show him his ID. He broke protocol because at the watch desk there was a panic button, and all he would have had to have done was to push that button and the police would have been notified. He did not do that. He stepped out from behind the desk. He was then captured by the perpetrators, by the perps. He called his second guard in, who was out patrolling the museum at the time, and they were both tied up and handcuffed and then put into the basement. The thieves departed with 13 of the Gardner's works of art 81 minutes later. So here's the synopsis of what happened. This is a set of double doors here, and the guards could have stopped the perps between the two sets of doors and basically locked them in. I'll come back to that in a minute. They came in, they overwhelmed the guard, and then basically leisurely found their way through the museum. Major thefts in this room and in this room, and then 81 minutes later went out through the door. They took their time. There's a period of 24 minutes where nobody knows exactly what they were doing, but they were there. And so it's thought that they knew nobody was going to come. That in fact, they were safe to take their time. I'm sure some of it was spent appreciating the quality of the art. But most of the time was spent cutting pictures out of frames and basically then carrying out these 13 works of art. So here's the #1 guard. This is the guy that let them in. A guy named Rick Abath. These are police photos of him secured with duct tape and tied to a pipe in the basement, and his colleague was treated similarly. The guard was able to give the police a description of his attackers. Both men wearing Boston police uniforms, or what appeared to be Boston police uniforms, and these are the pictures that the police developed based on descriptions that he provided. So the theft has taken place. What was stolen? Well, these are the pieces that were stolen. This is the Vermeer concert. This is a Rembrandt, Storm on the Sea of Galilee. This is the Frank landscape of the obelisk. This is a small Rembrandt self-portrait. This is a Napoleonic filial from the top of a flagpole. Why the hell they took that, nobody's ever figured out. This is a Chinese beaker. Again, not a significant piece of art. Probably worth, maybe $10,000, $15,000 at best. This is a Manet. This is Chez Tortini. This is another Rembrandt. So there were two major Rembrandts stolen. This is a gentleman and lady in black. These are sketches by Degas. So 5 Degas sketches. The Rembrandt self-portrait. That's small. That's probably, I think it's about 4 inches square. These all are big. So that's what was stolen. There is data from motion detectors that shows how the thieves moved through the museum. This is just from one room showing minute by minute their motion with these detectors. Interestingly, they never went into the room where the Manet was. And so the question is, the only person that was in there during this day, or this night, was the guard. But there is no evidence that these two perps went into that gallery on the basis of the data from the motion detectors. So that remains to be somewhat enigmatic. So I want to just talk about the rooms and what was in them and the pieces that were stolen. There's what's called the Dutch room, and the best known works of art were taken from the Dutch room. That includes Rembrandt's Christ in the Storm on the Sea of Galilee. That's the only landscape painting that Rembrandt ever did. Rembrandt's A Lady and Gentleman in Black. Vermeer's The Concert. As I pointed out to begin with, there are somewhere around 34, 35 Vermeers in existence. So this is a particularly significant piece of art. Flick's Landscape of an Obelisk, certainly not a top-tier artist, but it's hard to understand why they took what they did. And I'll show you in a minute some of the pieces that they didn't take. This Chinese bronze beaker that called it Gu, and then the small S-portrait by Rembrandt. So that was in the Dutch room. Here's what the Dutch room looked like after the robbery. Broken picture frames here, and this is, frames here where the paintings were basically cut out of the frames. This is the Dutch room showing the empty frames where 2 of the pictures were, Storm on the Sea of Galilee, and the portrait of a lady and gentleman in black. So this is the Vermeer, this is the Rembrandt. Or sorry, no, sorry, these are both of those are the Rembrandts. The Vermeer comes up in just a minute. Here's the Storm on the Sea of Galilee. This is this Rembrandt landscape. And this is a biblical story. And this is, these are large paintings, by the way. They're so big. The portrait is small and the Degas are small, but these are big. This is the lady and gentleman in black, again, very characteristic Rembrandt. And then also in that room, this is where the concert was. This is the empty frame from the Vermeer concert. And then here's the concert. Very typical of Vermeer with the light and so on. But one of the world's great artists and one of the world's great pieces of art, taken in this Heist. If we go on to the short gallery and the blue room, two other galleries, Manet's Chez Tortini, 5 Degas drawings, and then this Napoleonic bronze eagle filial off the top of a flagpole. They broke it off. Who knows why? Maybe they like eagles. I don't know. This shows the blue room, the empty frame, the Chez Tortini was in there. These rooms remain empty. The frames remain empty. They're still on the walls. And some of you probably have been there since this was in 1990. Some of you have probably been there since the theft, and you've seen these. But the Chez Tortini was there. Here's what it looks like. And again, this is the Manet. Then what's interesting to a number of people is that other than the Vermeer, probably these pieces would have been more valuable than a lot of the pieces we take. Certainly more valuable than the Degas sketches. I mean, they're only a few $1 million a piece. Botticelli's Madonna and Child with an Angel, Titian's Rape of Europa, Angelico's Dormition and Assumption of the Virgin, Velázquez King Philip IV of Spain. These are ones that I talked about before as early important acquisitions. Two paintings by John Singer Sargent, El Hale, and then that portrait I showed you, a Pier da Francesca Hercules, and Cellini's painting by Cellini. So those are the ones that were left. So the question is, why did they take what they did? And why didn't they take some of these others? So as I pointed out, today, the empty frames, this is from the website of the museum. Today, empty frames remain hanging in the museum as a placeholder for the missing works and as symbols of hope awaiting their return. Plus the fact that according to the will, if they change anything, all that stuff goes to Harvard. So you got to keep that in mind. So here's the next morning. This is the director of the museum. She gets called, and she says, they tell her, guess what? There was a breakdown in security protocol, and you're missing a lot of major pieces of art out of the museum. Clearly, she was not a happy camper. And there had been concerns at the museum about security. The Board of Trustees had declined to improve the security system after an assessment by an outside consultant. They didn't want to pay for it, and this is the result. Plus, it's clear that there was a major breakdown in security protocol. There was no way that that guard should have let those police officers in, or the purported police officers. So it's basically, poor security to begin with, and a breakdown in security provided by the on-site guard. Sorry, not the guide. The guide's coming later. So there's Ms. Hawley meeting with the press the next morning, and you saw I introduced it with a piece from the Boston Globe, the front page coverage of the theft, and all the major Boston papers, and basically all the papers throughout the world covered this because of the magnitude of it. It was estimated at the time, as you may recall from the newspaper headline, that these paintings were worth $200 million. Well, $200 million in the 1990 art market is much different than $200 million in the 2024 art market. It is not unusual now for pieces of art to sell upwards of $150 million. And so these pieces now are valued, and I'll come back to that at the end, are now valued at $500 million. But how do you value something that's unique? You value it on the basis of what you think somebody will pay for it. Right? And so who knows if that Vermeer were found, what it would bring on in the open art market. I mean, you know, the estimate is 500 million, but who knows? I mean, that given today's art market, that could only cover the 2 Rembrandts and the Vermeer. Everything else aside. So that's the heist. Well, why? Why did they steal the art? Whoever it was, whoever these perps are, why did they steal the art? Well, one of the first ideas was it was for somebody for a secret museum. And that's referred to as the Dr. No hypothesis, based on the James Bond movie. But all these conjectures of some Saudi prince wanting a Rembrandt for his basement that he could look at and enjoy and so on. And that's pretty well been ruled out. That this was not a theft for somebody's secret art collection. One of the most predominant hypotheses is that it was stolen to be ransomed. Okay? I'm going to take your art. By the way, if you give me $100 million, or maybe even 10, I'll give it back to you. So ransom. Another one was to be used as what people are calling a get-out-of-jail-free card. The people who are thought to have been involved in this are not your everyday burglars. These are thought to be all members of organized crime. And I'll come back to that in a minute when I give you kind of a list of some of the characters involved. But the question was, if I get this work of art, maybe if I tell you I can get it for you, of course I wouldn't walk into the police station and say, oh, by the way, I have this Vermeer, would you like it? I want to get my friend out of jail. But if you go through enough intermediaries, the argument was there were a couple of very major crime figures who were in prison at that time. Maybe it could be used to ransom them. And that's one of the predominant hypotheses. Another was that this could be used as collateral to bargain for contraband, such as drugs, weapons, or stolen jewels. And one of the early hypotheses was that this was done by the IRA, or the American side of the IRA, to get money to use this as these pieces of art as collateral to buy weapons to send to Ireland. This was, remember, this is 1990, and there was a lot of political activity going on in Boston in support of the IRA troops in Ireland. So anyhow, basically these are the general ideas. One, the Dr. No, the art collector who wants it in his basement to look at, to use it as ransom for somebody in jail, to be ransomed to get funds, to be used to get somebody out of jail, or to be used as collateral to get money to buy weapons and drugs and so on. So, the heist, the investigation. Well, what happened was immediately the FBI took over. And the Boston police and Massachusetts crime, but I don't know what their state level organization is, basically were pushed aside. So, and if any of you watch enough TV programs, you realize that there are not always warm and fuzzy feelings between the FBI and local police. The FBI basically says, we're the big boys, we know what we're doing, we're going to take over. And so this may be part of what happened here. But anyhow, they took immediate control of the investigation in Boston, the Boston office of the FBI. And they did this on the grounds that the art could cross state lines. If it stayed only in Massachusetts, then it would be in the state jurisdiction. But their argument was, at least as portrayed by some of the writers on this, that since it could cross state lines, it was a federal crime, and therefore they took responsibility for the investigation. They theorized that two local criminals with mob ties, a guy named George Reisfelder and Leonard Lenny DeLuzio, stole the art, but they died a year after the heist. A lot of the people who have been suggested to be involved were not nice people. They kill each other. I mean, this is basically the mob. The FBI then considered that a convicted bank robber, mob associate, Robert Garante, was the most likely recipient of the art. And then Garante's wife says that her husband, who died in 2004, gave two of the paintings to Connecticut mobster Robert Gentile. And then the FBI claims that Gentile tried to sell the paintings to an undercover FBI agent. As I said, there are, I don't know how, I think there's got to be at least 6 books, if not more, written about this. And so two of the major ones that I've read, one was written by a reporter for the Boston Globe, the other reporter for the Boston Herald, who basically followed these stories for 20 years. So there's a very large group of people who are potentially involved. The FBI felt basically from the get-go, and certainly as more evidence came forward, that it's hard for them to believe that they didn't have prior knowledge that they would be let in. That is, that the guard was in on the heist. He was an interesting character. He was a musician. He was a druggie. He was a bit of a scoundrel, but they could never find enough evidence to really pin it on him. The door that they used to get into the museum was basically a man trap. There were 2 sets of doors. And once they got through that first set of doors, they had to be let into the second set of doors, and they could have been trapped in there if the guys really started thinking about what his responsibilities were. And that is, the protocol was they were not to allow anybody into the museum. And so that if the guards found somebody suspicious, they could have held them indefinitely between these 2 doors, called the police and said, are these bona fide police officers responding to a call? You know, they didn't do that. So here's a brief cast of characters. Richard Abath, he was the night watchman. He allowed the men dressed as police officers into the museum, stepped away from the panic alarm. So he went from behind his desk to in front of his desk, and that was the only way to get outside help, was a panic alarm. There was a button that was on the desk. These are in alphabetical order, in case you don't catch that. So the next guy in alphabetical order is Whitey Bulger. Whitey Bulger. He is, as the slide says, was a notorious Boston mobster whose associates contend that he tried to find who did it because it wasn't his people and it was done on his turf. So he tried to find people who did it to exact, quote unquote, exact tribute from them because they pulled off the theft on his turf. He was an Irish mob guy. So you got the Irish mob with Whitey Bulger, and then you got the Italian mob with the rest of the cast of characters that we're talking about in a minute. The next guy is Miles Connor. He was a legendary art thief who contends that he cased the Gardner for a heist with Robert Donati. Well, Connor was in jail at the time, or in prison at the time, so he wasn't one of the perps, but he certainly could have been involved in the planning. And then Robert Donati, he was associate of the Boston Italian mob leader, Vincent Ferrara, who told Ferrara he pulled the heist to gain his release from prison. So he's trying to get his capo out of prison, so that's why he stole the art. This is the get out of prison free card example, or an example. Robert Gentile. Robert Gentile was kind of a low-level associate from Manchester, Connecticut, and he's considered to be a key suspect based on testimony from the wife of Robert Durante and the discovery of a list showing what the art would bring on the black market in his house. So he's in Connecticut. Question is whether the art ever go to Connecticut. Well, Robert Durante was considered by the U.S. FBI, or by the FBI, to be a key swingman of the theft. So he wasn't one of the thieves, but he perhaps got the art after it was stolen, and then it was stolen by the Rossetti gang of East Boston and others associated with Carmelo Merlino to Robert Gentile. So he's considered to be a key middleman. He could have been one of the planners. And then there's poor Anne Hawley. She was the director of the museum at the time of the heist, and you saw her in a picture a few minutes ago. So now we're getting to the Italian mob. Carmelo Merlino, he owned the Dorchester Garage, and this was the site, the center for a lot of nefarious activity. And he talked with associates such as Robert Durante and David Turner about arranging the return of the Gardner paintings in the late 1990s. So he said, well, maybe I can get these for you. He was kind of another one of the potential middlemen. David Turner, although he was supposedly in Florida at the time of the heist, or as I said on the slide, or was he, is believed to have played a key role. Either he was one of the thieves or involved in the planning. Then there's a guy who comes in a little bit later, an antiques dealer and low-level member of the Rossetti gang who claimed access to the stolen artwork. He said he didn't have it, but he knew who did, and therefore he could get it back for the FBI. So just to show you who some of these guys are, here's Miles Connor, out of jail, living in his home in Boston. And he was considered early on to have been a key player, and his name continues to pop up. This is the Merlino gang. So here's the garage in Dorchester where they hang out. So here's Merlino. I mean, what a nice looking bunch of guys, right? So here's Merlino. There's another guy, Pappas. He comes in and out. Here's Turner. Here's Rosenfeld. Here's DiMuzio. Here's Bobby Durante. Here's Donati. So maybe these two guys planned it, and then some of these guys, like these two guys, figured it out, or maybe this guy and this guy. So early on, it was felt that, although there was some discussion of the use of the art to get funds for the IRA, pretty early on it was decided that the Italian mob, and Whitey and his boys were kind of bystanders. And that in fact it was carried out by the Merlino gang and other members of the Italian mobs in Boston. So who planned the heist? Well, one of the key characters is Robert Garanti. Was he the mastermind? Another, hey, che face? Then there's good old Bobby Donati. Was he a mastermind? Well, I don't know. Who carried out the heist? Well, we've got David Turner. He's a Merlino associate. One of the thieves. He was supposed to be in Florida, but here's the picture. Here's Davey. So maybe he was one of the three guys. And then one of the favorites is George. He looks like one of the Three Stooges. He's a Merlino associate. And this is George Weisfelder. So, what do we know? Well, as far as I know, the last FBI news conference was held in 2013. And the statement was made, with a high degree of confidence, we believe those responsible for the theft were members of a criminal organization with a base in the Mid-Atlantic states and New England. This is 2013.
Very specific.
With a high degree of confidence. Okay. Here are the reward posters that were put out in 2013. Here's the Vermeer. Here's the Rembrandt Sea of Galilee. Here's the Chez Tortini, the other Rembrandt, small Rembrandt self-portrait, and then that's the flick. 5 million reward. It's now $10 million. $10 million. So, who did it? After the FBI press conference, this is the one in 2013, the media began putting names together to those to be involved. David Turner orchestrated it. Robert Garanti was in charge of hiding the stolen masterpieces. Robert Gentile was the fence. Or was it George Weisfelder, Lenny DiMuzio? But the key thing is, everybody's dead. So, everybody's dead, and as I said, the quote-unquote to the FBI and the I'm thinking blocking on the term, they had federal attorney in Boston. The return of the Gardner works remains a top priority. As I said, the estimated current value is about $500 million. The FBI, the museum, and the U.S. Attorney's Office are still seeking leads that could result in return of the art. And the museum is offering a $10 million reward in exchange for information leading to the return of the stolen works. The empty frames remain, and that's the story. So I will try to entertain questions. But let me I debated a long time before I decided to give this. I thought about a year ago about giving this talk, and I decided no, it was way too complicated. But hopefully I've been able to make a little sense of it.
This Gentile or Gentile, whatever his name is, tried to sell works to undercover FBI guys.
Yeah.
How come they didn't recover that? What's the FBI say?
Because they never saw them.
Huh?
They didn't see them. They never saw it. He said he had them. There's one story that somebody showed one of the pieces, but they didn't have the evidence. There are a lot of people who said they had access to it.
So they just thought he was trying to get some money or something. Yeah. Okay. I have another question, really. Ignorance of vocabulary. What's Dormition mean?
I don't know. Are there any good Catholics in here that know? I think it may mean the death and resurrection, but yeah.
I won.
I'm curious what happened to Ann Holly. She keep her job?
She kept her job. She's retired. I can't remember exactly what happened to her, but she did keep her job. The head of security did not. Yeah.
Suppose one of these things turns up, how would it be handled?
It would go to the FBI. My personal feeling is that if nothing's ever going to turn up. That these pictures have been gone for so long that they may end up in somebody's basement, somebody's grandchild discovers them in 10 or 15 years. But I would be very surprised if they ever turn up. If they did turn up, whoever got them would not have been one of the perps, because the perps are all dead. So they would probably get the $10 million reward.
Lowell, thanks. Is there a working theory about a relationship between the terms for not selling anything and the heist?
I'm not sure I understood your question.
Is there the FBI or whoever was investigating, I take it is still an open case.
Yes.
Is there a working theory about a relationship between the terms of the keeping the artwork in the museum, not changing anything, between that and the heist? In other words, is the heist a way of changing something, and therefore you'd be looking for who's going to change?
Harvard did it. Harvard.
Boy, there's another hypothesis. I don't think that one's been raised unless it's the president of Harvard. That has not been raised. There's a whole new theory. There's a book for you, Bob.
Okay, and then Paul.
What got you interested in this?
Well, I've been to the Gardner several times, and what got me interested in it is like a lot of things. Somehow I was reading something that sent me off on Wild Goose Chase, and went from there. Plus, I have a major interest in art history, but I thought it was really intriguing, and I think it's particularly intriguing given the history of the museum and its design and so on. But that's a good question. It's like a lot of things. I have no idea.
Paul.
Can you say anything about our exaggerated interest in art theft?
I think it's because it's become so high profile. I mean, if you look at the art market, things that come on the market are I mean, $140 million is, that's nothing. So I think that's one side. I think the other side, there's a lot of sides. It's probably a polygon. Another side of that is that this is of interest because it remains unsolved. I mean, I think if they'd solved this the next week, you would never hear about it. But the thing that's interesting about this case is that it's gone unsolved for so long, and it's so complicated. It's become so complicated. More general interest in art theft, I think it's come to people's attention that this is going on. And I think it's kind of like when I talked about repatriation of art, that it used to be something that museum directors and curators talked about, and now this has become a more widely discussed phenomenon. There are a number of major art thefts over time that have gotten in the news, that tend to be in the news for a short period of time. The theft of the Mona Lisa in the 1920s, the theft of Munch's Scream from the Oslo Museum in the late 1900s, or in the 1980s, I think it was. So a lot of high profile. Another issue that brings this to people's attention relates almost to the issues of repatriation, and that's tomb robberies. And so tomb robbery, is considered art theft. And Italy has a police force well over 100 officers whose jobs are to investigate art theft in Italy. There are a number of examples of major tomb robbery crews working through middlemen, particularly in Switzerland, where there are warehouses full of material that's been looted. And so, to some degree, I think it's the magnitude of it. I think another aspect of it is the issue or consideration, at least in some cases, of indigenous governments in protecting their heritage. And then third is the value and the dramatic nature of it. I mean, they got some really good stuff. They couldn't sell it at a flea market.
No.
And so the real question is, for these high-profile things, and that's why this Dr. No hypothesis, I think, is so attractive to many people, is that somebody wants this so that they can appreciate it only their own. They couldn't show it to anybody. I mean, you'd have to have a very small select circle of friends. If you've got a Vermeer in your basement, you can't let very many people know that you have it. That's a long answer or a non-answer. I'll let somebody else keep track. Go ahead.
Didn't you indicate earlier, though, that the FBI had kind of rejected the Dr. No hypothesis, that it wasn't somebody who wanted to treasure it, and then no one has said, well, I've got it, where's my money? So I'm kind of left with, well, why? What did they have in mind for this? Was it a long-term investment, like you hold a stock, or what?
That's why I raised those five possibilities, and I don't think there's an answer.
Lori?
Can I finish answering?
It's her turn.
Can I finish answering?
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, I've lost my train of thought. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to return to the first premise that it was stolen for a private collector. I think it smells of all that, somebody wanting. It's because it's such an eclectic source. I mean, there's, as you say, the three incredible, valuable paintings, but then there's also these minor works. So it's certainly an eclectic selection.
Now Debbie gets her turn.
Lowell, did I understand that there was a perfectly good, healthy guard in another room in the museum at the time that this was going on?
Yeah, and the guard at the front desk called him to come to the front desk, and they captured him.
Oh, so there were just the two?
There were two guards. There was
okay.
There was one at the desk and one making the rounds of the galleries.
Okay, got it.
Yeah,
Thanks.
and so the guy at the front desk went out from behind the desk, got captured, and then was told to call the other guard. He called the other guard, and he came up, and then they were both tied up.
I have a question. The paintings were cut out of the frames. Has anyone speculated on the significance of that? That's not exactly how you remove a painting from a frame.
It was quick. The frames were the frames would have been too big and too cumbersome to carry.
Right.
And so they extracted them from the frames.
Was that, so if it were someone who wanted a valuable piece of art, they didn't care if they, that's kind of weird to me.
Well, I think if there was a hole punched in the middle of it, it would lose its value. I think enough of the painting was probably intact.
Yeah.
Enough of the paintings were probably intact that they would still have their value. But it's a good point.
How does anyone know that the perps were the perps? I mean, you said the perps are dead, so you must know who they were.
All of the people who the FBI considered to be suspects are dead. So, assuming that within that group of suspects, the list of characters I gave you, assuming that within that list of characters are the people who did it, they're all dead. Now, there could be somebody else out there that nobody's ever thought of. But in terms of all of the people who were considered to have been involved, either from the mastermind point of view, from the sale point of view, or from the theft point of view, were dead. I'm not, I mean, let's say all the suspects are dead, and assuming that the perps are among the suspects, they're dead. Yeah. Yeah.
I have a copy of the Concert by Vermeer on my wall, and I used to tell my friends after 1990 that it was the original. And if you'd like to come and look at it, you're welcome.
But don't tell the FBI.
Could you pass it?
You have some excellent photos. So the essence and the artistic value of these has been captured, which makes me make sort of a dichotomy between ownership and enjoyment. When we were in Holland, we bought a couple of prints of Van Gogh or Van Gogh paintings, and they're beautiful. And they're everything the originals were, except they're worth dollars instead of millions. And I just wanted to make the point that ownership seems to be so important rather than the aesthetic value of something.
Well, I think your point's well taken. I mean, it's like any work of art. Is there a value to the original beyond its aesthetic value? I mean, the aesthetic value of a print can be comparable to that, but it's, when there's only one of something, it has both aesthetic and monetary value. And the value depends on what somebody's willing to pay for it. I mean, if that Vermeer came up for auction, the Getty Museum would be bidding on it. They would be bidding against probably the Metropolitan, and maybe the British, the National Gallery. That's microphone. So your point's well taken. The aesthetic value is much in Pam's print as it is in the original, but there's something about owning an original.
Anyone else? Thank you.